Hello again. Ooh, y'all, I know it has been a minute since the very first video that I did, but thank you very much for your patience. We've gotten some entries for things that people have found on the beach that they're curious about. And so we are going to continue with our series of identification. I'm Patrick Hutchins, and I hope that today I can tell you what the hell you're looking at. This week's video comes to us from Bonnie Obrensky, who's a friend that lives up in Port Townsend. And that is right where the Strait of Juan de Fuca curves down into Puget Sound. So it has all kinds of incredible creatures. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video and see what we got. Well, blobs on a rock. So looks like we've got some kind of curly white blob and then something heart-shaped that's orangish with kind of a brown attachment to it. Well, I mean, actually a lot of stuff really just looks like blobs when the tide goes out. A lot of animals and other things that you find in the beach don't have bones, and so when they're not up in the water, buoyed up by the water anymore, they kind of just down. But, you know, Bonnie did a pretty good job moving the camera back and forth, so like trying to zoom in and catch different angles on these things. And that brown and orange one is real hard, but the white parts reminded me a little bit of nudibranch eggs. Okay, you might be thinking to yourself, what? Nudibranch. It's a word that means naked breath, and it's the kind of more scientific name for sea slugs. Sea slugs have evolved to have their gills on the outside of their body. So naked breath, gills outside. And you can see on this opalescent nudibranch here, the gills are those kind of vibrantly shiny, almost like hedgehog-looking things coming off the back. And interestingly enough, in this species, those are also an extension of their guts, which maybe that's something we can get into another time. It's kind of beyond the scope of this video, but nudibranchs are a really incredible group of animals. There are hundreds, if not thousands of species all over the world, and many of them are just as vibrant and engaging as this opalescent nudibranch that you see here. Broadly speaking, nudibranchs come in kind of two flavors. One group, like this opalescent nudibranch, is called the aeolids. And aeolids have long oral tentacles. The left part, which you see waving around there, that's the nudibranch's head, and their mouth is on the bottom. So those kind of two appendages, tasting and feeling along the bottom, are the oral tentacles. And then they have what are called serrata. Those serrata are those gills hanging off the back there, and they tend to be in big, long formations that run down the length of the entire body. The other group of nudibranchs are called dorids. And dorids don't have serrata. Instead, they have a gill tuft. And you actually just saw this sea lemon nudibranch pull in that gill tuft after the mouth of this sea cucumber touched it. So that plume of gills is actually above their butt. So I always like to call it their butt fluff. And dorids will always have a butt fluff. They also tend to be a little more round and kind of like coin or disc shaped compared to aeolids, but that's not always the case. So what you really want to keep an eye out for is that gill tuft on their rear end. Now, if we're going to talk about nudibranch eggs, we got to talk about nudibranch mating. And nudibranchs are absolutely astounding. They're what we call a simultaneous hermaphrodite. So all nudibranchs, every individual, is both male and female at the same time. This is a really good time to talk about the difference between sex and gender. So an animal's sex is related to how their body is put together in order to produce different gametes or reproductive cells. So an animal whose body creates eggs or ova is called female, and an individual whose body creates sperm is called male. Gender is related to how different cultures view the way male and female individual humans should behave. So for nudibranchs, gender isn't really a useful term because it's not related to their culture. We're just putting our stuff on them. So I prefer to say that nudibranchs have no gender. They do have a sex though, and it's both male and female at the same time. The benefit of being both male and female simultaneously is that any two nudibranchs of the same species can have babies with one another, no matter who they are. And that's a great evolutionary strategy because it means you can pretty much be constantly laying eggs and expanding your population. So there's a pretty decent chance that these weird ribbony things that we're seeing might be nudibranch eggs. If you remember before, I mentioned some of the differences between aelid and dorid nudibranchs, so those two bigger groups that they fall into. And one of the things that's really neat for identification, and especially if what we're looking at in Bonnie's video is in fact nudibranch eggs, aelid and dorid eggs look really, really different. And so we can already eliminate huge groups of those animals from our ID guide, and then narrow it down from there, which is going to make a major difference. Most nudibranchs lay their eggs in structures called ribbons, but aelids kind of take the avant-garde modern art destructivist interpretation of what it means to be a ribbon, and that's what their eggs look like. So the one on the left you see there that looks kind of like a shattered china mixed with spaghetti, that's what aelid eggs look like. Dorids take that ribbon idea and make it a little more literal, and I think if we look back at Bonnie's pictures, yep, those are definitely more ribbony than they are noodly. So they're probably dorid eggs. And what's even cooler about nudibranch eggs is that if you can kind of figure out a shape that they remind you of, and then you cross-reference it with pictures of different species eggs, sometimes the eggs match the nudibranch down to species. Like no other nudibranch's eggs look like those. And so you can figure out exactly what they are. Okay, so I'm gonna start diving into just looking up the eggs of every commonly found nudibranch species that I can think of, but I'll need some kind of reference of some way to think about it. So those eggs look like something, but I can't really figure it out. Can't put my finger on exactly the shape that they remind me of. Well, I'm just hungry, so I'll finish this gyro and get back to you. Aha! A dorid nudibranch next to a gyro-shaped egg ribbon. I think this might be our culprit. This is the barnacle eating dorid. And you know what I'm just remembering too is that they spawn earlier in the year than a lot of other nudibranch species. And Bonnie sent us her video back in March. So this could be our culprit. Let's take another look at the video real quick and see if we can get any other details out of it. You know what? There are a bunch of hollowed out dead barnacles on this rock. And predictably, barnacles are the barnacle eating dorid's favorite food. So I'm not certain, but I think combining all the evidence, the time of year, the shape of the egg ribbon, the abundance of dead barnacles on the rock, and the fact that this is high in the intertidal zone, I think maybe we're looking at barnacle eating dorid eggs. And in fact, that kind of flipped over orangey bit. I was looking at some other pictures, and I think it could be the nudibranch itself. It's not really a good picture though, so let's pull one up just so you get to see them. Yeah, never thought a mollusk could be cute, did you? These guys are so awesome. I love their stubby little rhinophores, the kind of horns on their head, and their floofy little butt tuft. But there you go, yeah, this is what a barnacle-eating dorid looks like. Well, there you go. I think piecing it all together, we've probably got a barnacle-eating dorid on our hands. But if you've got a different opinion, I know there's a lot of smart folks out there with a really good eye who spend a lot of time on our local beaches. And if you think it's something else, let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to talk it out. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest where our really low tides for the summer are coming up during the day, I hope you get a chance to get out on the beach and maybe take a picture of some of your own nudibranch eggs. And if you do, send them my way. My email's down in the description, and I would love to see if I can tell you what the hell you're looking at.